Welcome everyone to the hobby desk. So today I'm talking about how to jazz up your barrels. Now I don't mean get brighter colours, make them more eye-catching. Of course that is fine. I'm talking about being more realistic, more post-apocalyptic, more used basically. So you got your classic GW barrel for Warhammer 40,000. And of course for Necromunda, which is a game I may have been overspending on. And I have painted it, I've made it look slightly grubby. So just a little bit of a null oil wash. Of course, Agrax Earthshade is also very, very nice to make something nice and grubby looking, a little bit dirty. Because you don't want your barrels too clean if you want them more realistic. So, I mean, it's okay, it's eye-catching yet dirty, which is what I like. Because I like it to be popping on a table. I want it to be eye-catching, so from across the room you can go, wow, look at that. And you go over there and you look at someone's table and you think it's amazing. That's great. But I also like it realistic, hence the bit of a wash on it to make it a little bit grubby. So nice bright colours and dulling them down afterwards. Of course, there are other paints that you can use from other manufacturers. I like a little bit of AK Interactive's Rust Streaks, and you can either douse the thing with Rust Streaks, and when it dries use a cotton wool bud and just take off a little bit of the top layer so it looks a bit more vibrant. So this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. I've done it on this piece of terrain recently. So I have airbrushed some reds and some oranges and some khakis and a bit of yellow, and then tied it all in with this Rust Streak stuff. So, ties everything in really nicely. You could paint a whole Necromunda board, maybe in a couple of days, picking out some bits of detail, things like that. Or you can just do really, really basic, a couple of block colours, and rip through it in one evening. It's such a nice universal paint, and also you can pick out rusted rivets and things like that, neat straight out of the bottle. I have done videos on that before, but today what I'm going to do is up your barrel game by things like drilling holes in it to make it look like it's more corroded. Using things like typhus corrosion, things like that, give it a bit more texture if you want a really rusted barrel. Also, I like to cut barrels at an angle, so if you can imagine, have a barrel like this, bangle, very good, barrel and angle, and cut it like that, and you can stick it on a base, sticking up, brilliant. But what I'm using my barrels for is scatter terrain, stuff I can put on a table without gluing it on a table. So going back to my Necromunda terrain, I'm not going to glue my barrels on the table because I like everything modular, but I want my barrels to be less uniform. So in 40k, yes, you might have an Imperial Guard ammo dump and all the barrels are the same colour. Cool, not a problem. In Necromunda, things kind of get passed around a bit, barrels are of different ages, they may not all come from the same supplier, they may have been repurposed, reused several times, whatever, so they might not be the same. So I'm going to keep this barrel as is, and then I'm going to modify a few of these barrels and show you what I mean. So one of the things you can do with your barrels is to make it a flaming hobo barrow. And I don't mean put hobos in it and set it on fire. I mean, I can imagine homeless people in Necromunda gathered around these barrels for warmth. So the best thing to do is you can, before you assemble the barrel, cut the ends off, so the circular bits, which is fine. But I actually like a jagged surface on one side, so you could always assemble it if you want and then cut the barrel lid out. Sanding that end is preferable because we'll get to that in a second, but keeping the jagged top implies that this barrel has been cut open by something quite industrial and keeps it more realistic. So when we paint this barrel up, that edge can be nice and rusty, or freshly cut if you wanted to, paint it nice and silver. to show that it's more realistic rather than just a cylinder. It looks more like a barrel, especially if you've got rusted holes in the side and things like that. So for rusted holes in the side of a barrel, you could always use a good old faithful drill. Now that looked quite industrial, but that is actually a battery drill, not a big Bosch drill that I'm going to use to drill through walls and things like that. Or you can use a pin drill and just drill a couple small holes on the side of your barrel to make it look like corrosion. So I'll do that now. I will get a pin drill. So I've got a tiny little pin drill. I don't have to use my battery drill because it looks scary. One of these hobby pin drills is perfect. I'm just going to drill a couple of small holes inside of the barrel. Remember to make it look like it's rust holes, so not too perfect. So a couple of holes next to each other, stagger it out, make it nice and rough. Try not to make it neat at all, because rusted holes rarely are neat. So nice, wonderful shapes. Almost like a Nurgle pox mark. 3 holes would be nice next to each other, but something like that looks kind of like a rusted hole. Maybe one slightly further down as well, just in the side there. Twirl it around just a little bit. Don't make it too neat, remember. Maybe another one next to it as well. Okay. But like I said, this is a battery drill. A little bit quicker. But obviously get an adult to help you if you're not confident. And if you are an adult and you're not confident, don't do it. There we go. Let's get rid of the sprue looking bit. Make it look a bit rough. I'll get some typhus corrosion on that later on. That will look lovely. Well, it won't. It'll look rusted and worn and beaten up. That's the way I like it. So I was saying earlier on about having the bottom of the barrel smooth. So cake lights. That's right, you heard me. Little lights you can put on wedding cakes and things like that. So these little balls with an LED in it has 2 little batteries in the bottom. So you pull the little tab at the bottom and it lights up. So you could always use a file to smooth it up if you want to, but I like to not glue these things in and have it like that. And you can see the little hole in the side there and there. Because if the batteries do die on these are super cheap. I think I got 4 on eBay for like £2 or something. And the batteries obviously won't last forever. They're only 2 tiny little batteries, but they will last several hours. I don't know how long your games are going to last, but hopefully it will last longer than one game. So what I'm going to do is paint this barrel up before putting the light in. Put the light in the bottom, and as you can see, it does not fall out, and it is nice and snug in there. And you could even, to disguise the LED, put a few little wisps of cotton wool in the top, or maybe a few little planks of wood, or tiny little RSJs or reed bars or something in the top to disguise the fact that that is indeed an LED. And it looks very much like an LED. Looks a bit too obvious, so someone is looking from above. It doesn't look very realistic. So I will paint this barrel up a minute. I'll get it nice and dirty with a bit of the rust streaks, and then I'll show you what it looks like with a bit of cotton wool. So pretty basic colour. It was just a flat green, and then I put the rust streaks on the top. Got rid of a few of the surface details like that with an earbud, and use a little bit of typhus corrosion, a little bit of rust around the holes there, and make it as rusty and as beaten as you like. And with the earbud that I was just talking about, the cotton wool bud, Q-tip, whatever you want to call it, I then easily pulled it off, stuck it inside. I personally use an airbrush, just gave it a little bit of a blast of a black, but you can use just obviously a regular old hairy brush, and then when you stick your light up the bottom of the barrel, that is, I don't want any health and safety complaints. Here we go. See in there funny? Here we go. Nice click. Now you can see a nice little barrel for your Necromunda models to stand around. Warm themselves up. So the next thing you could do with a barrel is, like I said, to make it into more of a trash, more of a rubbish barrel. So things that people don't want, like a skip basically, chucking things away, reed bar, RSJs, things like that, chucking in the top. So just an excuse basically to make something really, really rusty. And remember to drill as many holes as you like in your barrel. You can even have a barrel that is like a doily. There is more holes than there is barrel. So I'm going to do that right now. So you've seen this technique before. I'm going to use my little battery gun, or you can use your little pin drill. Make as many holes in the barrel as you like. What you can also do with your barrel, talking about drilling some holes, is just to drill some holes like that and have maybe a little bit of whatever you think is inside. Promethium, some kind of fuel, some kind of oil running down the top. You can even have it like so and have a hot glue gun and splooge down there to make a nice little pool. Of course that works better mainly for a diorama or basing a model. I'm going to have it as modular pieces I can just put on a board. So I mean, by all means, drill holes like that, make a nice little rusted pattern in the side of a barrel, not a problem. But I'm going to make this a bit more interesting by sticking some scrap metal out of the top. So there we have another example. So like I said, I've just chucked a load of the metal on the top. Same metal. There's a little straw in there, a chunk of sprue I just shaved, some mesh, just make it nice and rusty, and because it's Necromunda and it's grimdark but with a little bit of comedy, I have added a tentacle, so a bit of hard stuff on that, and the tentacle is made out of green stuff, just coming out of one of the rusted holes. So that's another thing you could do with a barrel, nice and simple and easy. So this video is basically just a couple of examples. We can do the barrels just to mix them up a little bit. So like I said, you could have a couple of flaming barrels, which is alright, it's pretty nice, and a couple of barrels with some scrap in. Now remember, when I made my flaming barrel, I just had a little bit of cotton wool bud or an earbud, Q-tip, whatever you want to call it. You can really tease it so lots of smoke looks like it's billowing out. And it's the same kind of thing that you could do if you were a train enthusiast and at the bottom of a garden you want a little barrel that someone's burning leaves in. So it's the exact same process, just a bit of a different scale. And I think the barrels look quite cool actually, to be fair. I mean, better with the light off. Nice and dark, flaming barrel, and less like an LED now with the cotton wool stuff in there. But going back to lights are actually pretty cool to have in your toolbox, I guess, for terrain making. So I have got another scrap pile for Necromunda here that I have put a flashing little tea light in, a little flame. I think the flame looks maybe kind of chummy, so you can pull it off and just have the LED in there, he says. Trying to take the hint. There we go. Just a light in there, winking away. Of course, you can still use it for like a computer console or something like that. But just brightens up grim dark. I know that seems a bit weird thing to do, but the contrast in the dark and the grubby and a flashing light, which could be flame, could be a console or something like that, is pretty nice. How do I make it? Well, it's pretty basic. You can see that I have got here from a certain store in the UK. Zoom. Really cheap tea lights. So this was £3.99. I have seen them on sale before, 4 for £1. So these little tea lights come with batteries. Super easy to take apart. So I'll get one out for you. And if you've got a big piece of terrain, you can just pop it underneath the terrain, not a problem. Obviously it comes with little tabs. You just pull those out and you can just turn it on, and I'll adjust the lighting so you can actually see what's going on here. There we go. So you can see that little light is flickering away. Realistic flame apparently. But yeah, they're super easy to take apart. The plastic is quite breakable if you want to, but there is a little hole just there. You can get a little screwdriver in, flick the bottom off, so the bottom comes off like this, and you have your battery in there. Now you can leave it so you can have a little flick switch on and off. In my particular case, what I did was hot glue the battery in place because I didn't have much space underneath there. I could have cut this up and slot it in there possibly and use some wires, but there's no wires inside these. These are super basic. It literally, the on and off switch, as you can see here on this one that's all in pieces, literally just pushes the wire on, pushes the wire off, and it's as simple as that. I mean, you could wire them in with an on and off switch, but for £2.99, 8 tea lights, if the batteries last a couple of weeks, it's not a big deal. And like I said, I've hot glued it in so I could just slide the battery out if I need to. All I'm doing is slightly moving off the connection so it's not winking anymore, pushing on the connection, and it winks. Simple as that. So when you put it on the table, it looks pretty cool. If you want to be a bit more high tech and you want to put a breaker switch in there, the little switch that comes in the set is perfectly reasonable. You can just flick it on and off, not a problem. But yeah, lights I think really do make a difference to stuff on the tabletop. I've seen people last few years putting lights inside of a Space Marine Razorback, a Rhino, a Land Raider, putting little motors inside and letting them drive around. I think that's pretty cool. I might do that once at some stage with my Space Marine tanks. But yeah, just a short little video how to spice up your barrel game. And yeah, those little lights that you can get, cake lights, not very expensive at all. Or if you have a big piece of terrain you want to stick some lights in, these things are super cheap, super basic. What I've also used for these in the past, playing Heresy and things like that, stick a big ball of cotton wool over the top, and when you turn this on, it looks like something has been destroyed. It's nice to put it on top of a tank, maybe take the turret off or something and just pop it inside so the smoke is billowing out and there's flame to it. I've used it in my D&D campaigns, having a bonfire or something like that, or maybe a temple on fire. Super easy, big wad of cotton wool, stick it to this, and if you wanted to you could buy batteries, flick that catch off and put new batteries in on a regular basis. But for £2.99, 8 of those things, super cheap. Or I think so anyway. I think the next thing I'm going to do with those tiny little cake lights is, once again for Necromunda, I'm going to make a barbecue. So these nice water containers, or whatever they are, from the Zone Mortalis kits, already been chopped in half. I might put some coal in there for the barbecue, i.e. probably cat litter, and paint it up, bit of PVA glue, and then drill out the bottom and put one of those lights underneath so it shines underneath. Or maybe even a couple of those should fit in there fairly nicely, and put some mesh over the top. Maybe a little bit of cotton wool or something. 2 little slots for the little tabs to go in to break the connections for the battery. And there you go, your flaming barbecue pit. So hopefully this video has inspired and I haven't bored you too much with my ramblings. Please hit that like button if you haven't done already, and please subscribe for some more great hobby content. Stay safe, you wonderful, wonderful people.